We're here at World Retail Congress 2014 with Gregory Polletta. He's a designer, founder of Initiate, a new product development firm, as well as a designer in residence at True Start True Capital, a venture capital firm specializing solely in retail. Hi, Gregory.
Hey, how are you?
I got that all right,
yeah.
right? So you had a really interesting talk this morning, kind of how retail needs to learn from the R&D way of doing things. So kind of what's your approach to that?
The reality is that most major companies spend between 10 to 13% pre-tax, pre-EBITDA, pre-everything on R&D. So companies like Pfizer, Microsoft, Google, you name it, they're taking 10 and 13% of their revenue and putting it directly into R&D. And then that R&D thinking is turning into new products. Now, traditionally, retailers don't do anything because retail is the last stage in getting a product to a consumer. But there are retail organizations like ASOS and Muji, especially Alessi, which is probably my most favorite example, who invest in R&D for new products themselves, building their own brand and building their own products that consistently allow them to do things that no one else has essentially done before. And this is a trend that's starting to happen in the retail world, which is why I was brought into True Start and True Capital, to inject the kind of R&D and design thinking mentality into the retail organizations.
So kind of what is that mentality then?
Well, it stems purely from the board level. So the board of a company determines that there's actually a reason why investment in new technologies or even new designed products with that firm's name will bring a larger return for their shareholders. So with people like True Start Capital and True Capital Partners, they're investing in technologies that are specifically going to be used in retail organizations. And so what we've talked about is using the MIT Media Lab model specifically for retail. And the truth is that MIT Media Lab has been doing this for years. Nicholas Negroponte was the one who pioneered this type of work, and firms from all over the world join in, but retailers primarily have just stayed on the sidelines. And now with venture capital firms and private equity firms that are investing in technologies and design, these retailers are coming back to the way they used to be a long time ago, when there was a brand that was associated with a large retailer and you bought products from that brand.
So is it kind of like a retailer taking a risk on a product that may not work in the end, or are they developing their own products, or how do you see them kind of really having like their own R&D departments? How do you see it really?
Okay, no, so that's a really great question. So I don't really particularly think at this stage of the game that retailers are going to have an R&D arm. But if retailers start adopting design thinking and disruptive design thinking, then they're going to have a much better chance in the marketplace, because ultimately, and this is the really interesting part, retail is supposed to be fun. I get asked this question all the time. I mean, if I work with, let's say, a large manufacturer of luxury goods, or if we do product design for Alessi or Guzzini, things that we've done before, it's literally the job of the designer to delight and try things and experiment and, break rules. And it's art. It's just like what I was saying about Alessi. It's R&D for art. But retailers sometimes ignore this, and then you've got ones that really do it very well, like Selfridges, where they have tremendous window displays, and it draws people in. Or people like Alessi, who literally design products that draw people in to their stores. They have the physical stores as well. And companies like, let's say, ASOS or Muji, which have very, very clear visual identities, they routinely invest in these types of things, and so their brands are incredibly stronger. And you can identify them, and we talk about this all the time. You know a Muji product when you see it. I mean, you could throw a million pieces of anything on a table, and you know which one's Muji. Same thing with Alessi, you know which one's Alessi. So retailers know that this is something that's going to bring more customers to them. So
is part of it kind of making things more emotional?
Sure. I mean, it's two separate worlds. This is what I was saying in my presentation. It really is two separate brains. You have to have a very emotional brain to create something that is identifiable. I mean, I love telling this story. I've been telling this for years. I guarantee you that you know the chair that your grandmother sat in. You can see it, you can smell it, you can touch it, you know exactly what it is. And if that chair were designed by a designer like Ames or Sotsas or somebody else, it has become an icon. So this thing is valuable for you as a person. And there were Woolworth products, there were Selfridges products, there are Muji products, and that's important. It's a brand as well as an emotional content. I mean, I have the Ames chair that my uncle sat in, And so every time I sit in this chair now, it's, permanent.
Do you think that retailers are kind of just failing at innovation at the moment, especially in like the luxury sector of retail?
See, this is a really good question. Failure is not a word that I like to use because if you're doing it, you're not failing. See, this is like really important. I talked about this earlier, and I constantly talk about this. Not doing is failure.
So you think that basically what the design mentality of it is just to go and try?
Keep trying. Keep trying, keep failing. The more money you have, the bigger. And the reality is, if you're a $1 billion company and you're not investing like I said, typical company, 10 to 13% pre-tax revenue is R&D. So it's either R&D or it's design. And if you're not doing that, then how are you growing? The glorious failures. I love it. I love it that Alessi has that attitude. They say it. They're open. So the avoidance of failure, that is the failure.
And kind of speaking of failures, you talked of a big one of your company at the beginning that's now a massive success. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So in the beginning, the project we did for Louis Vuitton got us tons of press. It was our most, valuable in terms of like iconic design that we'd ever done that got picked up by magazines and interviews and everything else.
Can you describe what it was?
So basically, it was a building facade for Louis Vuitton that uses topiary art for the facades of Louis Vuitton buildings that are actually under construction. So it wasn't even a permanent structure. It was something that was supposed to be used to be interesting and really nice. And French topiary art is a true art form. And we embedded that into the Vuitton imagery. And we basically did it for temporary structures so that when the real building is revealed, you could take down these plants that have essentially grown and have been cultivated. So the entire act of the cultivation of the plants is the growth of the building that is being built behind it. With that, we did really advanced work with holography, with moving facade designs, all the technology related to this. And when we did it, it was 2006. So this is, early Facebook. There was no mobile phones that he could even handle it. We're using like WAP and SMS, and the technology was completely viable at the time. And we pushed really, really hard to do this. And it was, a multi-million-dollar thing, and it was, different offices all over the world, and they just didn't want to take the risk. And, nobody knows really why. I mean, you never really know why someone says no. And we tried with a lot of other organizations as well. And so in the process of just going out there and talking to organizations, you're planting the seed of the idea everywhere, and there's no way to protect it. So, it got picked up and it got done in the Sochi Olympics, and it got the Golden Lion Award at Cannes, and it generated $12 million in revenue for Megaphone in Russia. And, there you go. And I mean, it's hard to see this, but I mean, when you articulate this so very clearly and you're looking for organizations to pick it up, it's a race. So it's like technology. I mean, if I go out and I talk about a technology that's inside a research lab that I've maybe worked with one of my students in the PhD MBA programs, I tell them all the time, don't talk about it. Don't go out, and scientists know this. When I worked in research labs, it was, don't talk about it. But as a designer, what do? You got to talk about it. You got to tell people. You got to say, all right, let's try and do this. How do we do this? You have to work with the engineering firms, and then it's for anybody. You release it.
Keep it close to your chest for as long as you can.
Yeah, and you have to have partners that really want to be able to do it. I mean, if we do a design with a partner like Roche-Beaubois, I mean, we gave them everything really early from the beginning, and we worked with the manufacturing, and the designs that we did for them made $1.9 million in 3 years. And this was furniture, or lighting systems that we did. I mean, you have that relationship. But then when someone says no, then you have a very interesting, challenge, right? Let's say you're the CEO, or you're the board member of a big company, and someone comes to you with a technology, and you say, I'm not sure about it. Well, the fact that you're not somehow investing in it, even in a small way, even as a consortium group, means that person, if they've got enough individual strength, they're going to go out and they're going to start talking to other people. So when it's a technological advantage, then, or a design advantage, at some point, you want partners, you want firms that are going to take those risks with you. And you can only do it with some of the big ones sometimes. So, if you're the CEO, or if you're the board member, or you're the designer, there's this whole risk mentality that you have to have, and it's just part of the game.
Is that like if you had like a number one lesson to give retailers today, and you're going to do a masterclass later, is it about risk?
It's about risk. It's about how do you deal with risk in terms of new technologies, designers, and trying new things. The example that I give is a friend of mine, Lisa Smith. She's running the one of the venture capital arms of Unilever. And I brought her a couple of times to conferences with me, and I brought her specifically because she was in town. And the other people that I worked with at some of the other research labs or even some of the design houses, I bring them and I say, listen, please talk about risk. Please talk about failures. And naturally inside a large organization, failure is supposed to be mitigated at all costs, right? So the higher you get inside the organization, the less risk you want to take. But then the risks that do take and the ones that actually make it, everybody's scrambling for. But during that process of risk taking, everyone's against you. So it is a very sort of Don Quixote style. And you have to find people inside the organization that will quietly keep the flames together. And some organizations are incredibly good at it. Like Unilever is an incredibly good organization at being able to do this. Alessi is an incredibly good organization. And those are like two of my favorite examples because Unilever does not produce emotional products that are incredibly important to somebody when they get older. They want to just buy the product, they want to know that it works, and that's all there is to it. But a potato peeler from Alessi is something that a kid will play with. We did tea strainers for Guzzini. The reason why we did these tea strainers for Guzzini was we thought, could I embed the tea culture or the tea experience in an object that a kid carries with them and keeps on their desk for the rest of their life? Because this is the tea strainer that they used with their grandma or their uncle or their aunt. That kind of emotional capability is something that makes a lot of end result. I mean, Alessi is not two guys in a room making tea strainers or a couple of guys in a factory making pots and pans. They've embedded the entire design culture inside their organization and look at what they're able to accomplish.
And something like Unilever where you don't necessarily see the design and the
it's all in there
risk
still.
Is there
it's all in there still, yeah. And so these two organizations, very left brain, very right brain, are the best examples I can think of. And so, being a designer and, previously an engineer and a research scientist, it's literally taking me personally 30 years to have all of these skills under my belt to be able to walk into somebody and explain it does work, it doesn't work, here's how it's, and then be able to actually do it. It's a real privilege to, have that journey. But if companies don't do that themselves, then how are they going to have the same capability? So, I wish I could clone Alberto.
But
yeah.
not yet.
Yeah.
Well, that was Gregory Polletta. Thank you very much.
Thank you.